So I just got out of seeing Ad Astra, and it was interesting. I think what most people are expecting from the trailers and what it really does kind of end up being is Interstellar and by extension, 2001: A Space Odyssey, in the sense of it having a lot of very rich, wide-shot, calm views of outer space, of people in ships in space, very stirring orchestral music, a lot of moments of really taking in that atmosphere. So just aesthetically, that's fantastic. The way it's shot and directed to is very moody and introspective, which plays to the narrative of the story. At its core, it's about Brad Pitt's character. He's a decorated army man / astronaut. It takes place in the near future, where he's working on this massive spire or space station type thing that's connected to the Earth, and this huge event called the Surge happens. That's like this big ambiguous EMP that is being shot from somewhere in space that is causing all kinds of chaos on Earth. So he has to go try to stop the person or find the person who might be responsible for it, and turns out it's his dad. Or maybe his dad. They're not sure if he's alive or not, and that's played by Tommy Lee Jones in predominantly video footage. A lot of video footage in the movie, actually. It's interesting. It has a relatively small cast. Obviously, it's set in outer space, so the scope of it is quite substantial. But a pretty small cast. Brad Pitt, of course, is the main man, but Liv Tyler and as his wife or ex-wife or some manner of love interest, and then of course Tommy Lee Jones as his father, appear mostly in flashbacks and in video footage, and there's a supporting cast of other members of the military and astronauts. A lot of dead meats as he travels, the story travels along. He ends up pretty alone, which ends up kind of being a theme in the movie, and isolation, literally and figuratively, in outer space, and as he goes, just accidents, people getting picked off for one reason or another as he goes to the moon, and then he goes to Mars, and then he goes to, and it keeps going ahead, and it's not as grandiose, not as fantastical as Interstellar, but it does still keep that feeling of being just so far away from home and everything and that is always really appealing to me, and more so than big explosions and action and such, which there is a little bit of in this one, if only to kind of make it, that four corner blockbuster. There's kind of a shootout with some moon pirates or something that happens at one point. Then it's a little tenuous, but it is a nice bit of world building, because there are parts of it that I think are nice touches of realistic world building that's not super innovative, but is subtle in a way that I appreciate, where he goes to the moon and there's like customs and there's restaurants and stuff there. Things I did not expect to see in this movie: an Applebees, one, and two, a man being killed by a baboon. But in any case, yeah, it's very striking to look at. I think that the narrative overall is, like I said, not super remarkable, but it's very much about the atmosphere, I think, and it's more about the journey than the destination, and that's almost part of the narrative. My only major criticism overall would be that I don't think it quite goes far enough in maybe making the metaphor or the emotional core of it kind of resonate. It certainly does a better job than Interstellar. I will give it points for that, because Interstellar was very much about these big grandiose notions of, oh, love is gravity and it's the most powerful thing and whatever, and we're not actually going to even show you who Anne Hathaway's love interest is, even though it's so important. No, in this one, it's very much center stage, almost to a fault, because there's a lot of Brad Pitt voiceovers, which sometimes are helpful, sometimes aren't. And the script, too, is sometimes very powerful, and but it's not ever really anything more than just kind of superficial sort of woes about this past of his character and stuff, but you never really know what that is. And it's a 2-hour movie, so I don't feel like it would have been too much to ask to have a little bit more of that. Maybe it would have been a distraction, but there's these moments where it's like, oh, I should have been more with my wife, or oh, my dad, Tommy Lee Jones, was kind of a jerk or whatever. And in part of it is, of course, that he left his family and went on a spaceship, and that's obviously the main textual aspect of what's going on there. But then I'm like, okay, but did he beat him as a kid? Was he Brad Pitt, I mean, like, was there a specific thing that happened to his wife? You don't really get a sense of what any of that is. It's all very superficial. So when they try to have this sort of arc to it at the end for him and some other characters, it just doesn't really, you don't really get a sense of what he's overcome emotionally. You get a very great sense of what he's overcome physically. You see it throughout the movie, but I feel like that's meant to parallel something that's happening with him personally. And we don't quite see as much of that. So that's something I think I would have liked to have seen. Maybe there's a director's cut we can get at some point. You know, like I said, the score, the music of it is very powerful as well. Nothing really sticks in the head like anything that Hans Zimmer would do for another project. Definitely fits the mood. Cinematography, again, great moments of just expressing the scope of the galaxy, specifically just the Milky Way galaxy. That's actually very specifically a point there. Up to Neptune. I got a little sad and felt old at myself watching the movie because I realized, oh, that's right, Pluto doesn't count anymore. We're not going to Pluto. I mean, again, like I said before, the script has some interesting quirks to it because it is very much trying to be a human and emotional film, which that kind of came off a little more sarcastic than I intended. I really like that. I think that's something that you don't see a lot in these kinds of movies, especially not major Hollywood blockbusters. Usually you got to go to like an A24 movie or Robert Pattinson or something to get that. But anyway, that's good. But every once in a while there's just little things of a script that are just, the exposition is just a little bit too heavy, or they just say something that is like, it just sounds a little bit too like Star Trek gobbledygook, because this is meant to be like in the near future, but it is more grounded than Interstellar or those other films. But then they'll just say someone will say something like, we're going to send a message via secure laser, which I guess is a thing, but it just kind of took me out of it for a second. And then overall, again, I don't want to be the cinema sins here, but the core conceit of the movie, just to kind of get a little bit spoilery, even though this happens within like the first this is kind of established in the first 5 minutes, and it's just a plot device. But the surge that's happening is being caused by something, and to me it was honestly so over-explained yet under-explained that I wasn't sure how much of this was supposed to be a mystery. But it's coming from something, a ship or a structure of something out by Neptune, which is revealed or heavily implied and later sort of revealed to be this ship that Tommy Lee Jones' character, his father, was last seen on or last believed to have been alive on. And I was kind of hoping they would explain what the situation was with that, and they don't really. The military, whoever earlier on was like, oh, we're going to send a nuke out there to take out Tommy Lee Jones because he's gone all Colonel Kurtz or whatever, and he's sending out this crazy space ray that's killing the planet and creating EMP bursts when they're convenient for the plot to cause problems. And then he gets out there and he's like, oh no, that wasn't me, that was all the people that I killed because they wanted to stop me from trying to find aliens. And I'm like, okay, well, one, why would that be part of the ship if it's a research vessel? And two, if it's just like a Star Trek thing where we just hit this quantum whatever engine hard enough until it turned into a death ray, like, why couldn't you just shut that off? I mean, I don't understand why. Again, I know that like it's needed to get him out there and to get him to interact with his, or try to find his father, but I'm just like, I feel like there's an easier solution to this. And then also earlier on in the plot, when they have to send him to the moon and they send him to Mars so that he can relay a message to his dad, it's like, could you just have him do that? Could you get a rocket straight from the Earth to Mars, or could you just have him send the message on Earth? Of course, I was happy to have an excuse to see Brad Pitt shoot people on the moon and go to Mars, but I guess that's kind of the near future as you play fast and loose with what technology we have and what technology we don't quite have yet. Part of that technology is this psychological evaluation thing, which is kind of had a Blade Runner 2049 vibe to it, where just a couple of points in the movie he's talking to a person or a robot or something with this little Nicorette patch on his neck for evaluating his psychological state. And that's kind of a fun little thing to have as a through line. But overall, it's really just kind of the way that this is all combined. It's familiar concepts, it's a familiar look and feel for a movie, but I've never really seen it done, again, aside from Interstellar and other films like that in the last couple of years, with this kind of cast. I mean, it is impressive. It's you know, Tommy Lee Jones and Brad Pitt. That's quite a pairing. And this film kind of came out of nowhere for me, at least. I didn't really hear a whole lot of press for it beforehand. I think it was only a few months ago, but I first saw the trailers, and the next thing you know, it's upon us. So yeah, I don't know what everyone else thinks of it, but I really quite enjoyed it. I would say that I would probably give it like a 8 out of 10 or so. It didn't really blow me away. It wasn't anything too extraordinary. There definitely were moments where I felt like maybe something more interesting could have happened, or more unique could have happened. But I walked away from it satisfied, and that's really all I can ask for seeing any movie on a Thursday night.